Thank you. So I'm calling the CPOA board special meeting to order. And with that, Ms. Varela, will you take the roll?
Chair French,
Yes.
Vice Chair Crawford, Member Jackson,
Here, yes.
Member Luce,
Here.
Member Nixon,
Here.
Member Rayner, Member Wartell.
Here.
Thank you. And Chair French, it looks like Vice Chair Crawford just joined. Vice Chair Crawford, we're taking roll.
Oh, sure thing. I am present.
Thank you. Chair French, you have a quorum. And also present with us today is myself, Valerie Barella, CPOA admin, Diane McDermott, CPOA lead investigator, Commander Scott Norris, APD, CPOA board legal counsel, Ms. Tina Gooch, Commander Jason Sanchez, APD, Mr. Carlos Pacheco, City Legal. Chair French, I think you're muted.
I am so sorry about that. And with that, is there approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second for approval of the agenda. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Varela, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Luce,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Wartell.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. And with that, there were no public comments, correct, Ms. Varela, to the agency?
That's correct, Ms. French.
Ms. Varela, Member Rashad said he is in the waiting room.
Chair French, I don't
Oh,
see.
no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I misread his text. Okay, he'll be here after he's in another meeting. So, okay, sorry about that. So yes, and I checked the POB email and there was no public comment. So with that, we'll move on to the serious use of force cases and the officer involved shootings. With that, I'm going to request that we table case 19-753. Sorry, guys. You heard the baby. I'm going to request we table 19-75385, and I'm asking that it be tabled due to once you download it, it came up to a different number for me, Member Wartell, and Member Nixon. Member Jackson or Crawford, did that happen to you also?
Same.
Yeah, I think I gotta find my notes, but yeah, I don't think I could find that one either.
Okay, so it has the case number on there. And so when I downloaded it, I didn't even pay any attention. I just started reading, right? And then Member Wartell said, look at the case number. And it's the incorrect case number. So the wrong case number was downloaded under an incorrect number. So I'm sure APD will correct that. I think Member Nixon already addressed it with them. So we'll just table that for now. Is that okay?
Do you need a motion to table or not?
I made a motion to table, I'm sorry. So I need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor, excuse me, Ms. Varela, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Luce,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Wartell.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Okay. I am sorry. I'm trying to open the file so I could give you a review. I have two computers going. I have one that is supposed to be downloading it. Hold on just a minute, please. Just one moment for our next case. Our next case that we'll be looking at is case 20-36730. So let me look at it and see.
Chair French, while we're waiting, Asia Brooks from the DOJ joined the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I was able to pull up my notes or look at this case. So this case is, let me just give you a short summary of it. And I'll read from some of the information that was given. On May 5th, 2020, at approximately 22:56 hours, an individual later identified as Mr. Ortiz began calling 911. He would alternately ask for a ride or simply not respond to questions from the 911 operator. After several calls to 911, he told the operator he was at the embassy suite. People were bothering him and he was about to lose it. So at approximately 23:50, an embassy suites employee or security guard called 911 to report this individual was trying to start a fight with them, and I believe they wanted him removed. Let's see. So officers were dispatched, and the gentleman continued to be resistant to them. They put him in handcuffs and they escorted him to their car. And I'm just going to start ad-libbing. So once they put him, he didn't resist when they put the cuffs on. He started resisting once they put him in the car. He started kicking and hitting, and I can't remember all the things that he did. And they used passive restraint system to him. And then they lawfully told him he was under arrest again. And he continued to try to resist them. They, from what I could see, everything that they did was lawful. I didn't see anything that would justify that they did anything wrong when trying to restrain this gentleman. And so with that, I'm just going to ask, and I'm sure all of you read the report, and I don't have all my notes in front of me because I'm out of town due to a medical issue, so I'm not going to continue with that. But I'm sure all of you read it. There's a lot more in this than that for the overview, but that's all. I'm just going to give a little short review of that. And with that, I'm going to make a motion that we accept the Force Review Board's findings and recommendations.
So moved.
We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion on this case? I have a question of Commander Norse. So when something like this happens and there weren't any, I would say there were no sustained findings on the allegations from the complainant, but there were some SOP violations found that didn't have anything to do with the complaint. So when that happens, and it's out of the timeline for the officer's CBA, what happens with that? Do they just go away? Are they put on his car? Excuse me, just what happens after that?
So they don't go away. Unfortunately, when they do fall out of the timelines, the officer does not serve that suspension. However, those SOP violations do go on their retention card, and any subsequent violations that occur in any other incident, use of force or otherwise, if that person is found to be sustained, those, depending on what the violation is, those get considered for progressive disciplinary towards suspension, if that's what the SOP violation warrants.
So let me understand this. So if it's past the timeline per their contract, you can't discipline them, but you can still put it on their card and use it in the future?
Yes. And as you know, each sanction kind of has for lack of a better term, a statute of limitations, so to speak, right? So it depends on what sanction is tied to the SOP that was found to be violated. So if it's a verbal, that's, I believe, 6 months, no occurrences occurring in 6 months, that can't be used, or subsequent to 6 months, that can't be used for progressive discipline. For a letter of reprimand, it's a year. That would be a sanction 6. And for like a sanction 5, which is a suspension, that's 2 years. So as the higher the sanctions get, not numerically, but in terms of discipline, the longer it takes for that officer can't really kind of commit the same violation or a like violation for whatever subsequent SOP violation is found. That would get added on to their suspension or considered for progressive disciplinary issues.
Okay. All right. I was just wondering about that because there weren't any anything done. They didn't sustain anything on the allegations that were made by the complainant, but they did find some other ones. So just looking at that. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any other comments? If not, Ms. Perla, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Luce.
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Wartell.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to case number 20-37588 and 20-37585. And let me look at this. So this happened on May the 9th, 2021, at approximately 3:49 hours. Officers responded to a traffic accident with injuries at the intersection of Montgomery and Wyoming. Officers were advised that a traffic light had fallen into the roadway and that that involved vehicle, but the location of the vehicle was unknown. So I'm just going to go from memory on what happened on this case. So the officers cited a car with damages a few blocks away in a parking lot. So when they went over there, the damages were, they could tell that they assumed it was from the traffic light. And so it appeared that the driver was intoxicated. So they did arrest the driver under DWI charges. They took the driver to MDC. And at that time, when they asked to take the breathalyzer, she became resistant and would not take the breathalyzer. And so MDC would not transport her without that. So then the officer took her to the hospital to have her blood drawn. And at that time, she became combative again. While in the emergency room, you have to sit down. She wouldn't sit down, so the officer had to push her down by her shoulders and just used minimum restraint that was required. Like I said, because she was combative and she wouldn't obey lawful orders, and so they didn't find that they had violated any serious use of force violations for this case. I do agree with that after looking at that. So with that, I'm going to make a motion that we accept the Force Review Board's findings and recommendations.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, I have a question again of Commander Norris. just because there seemed to be not a disagreement, but when they got to, not MDC, but when they got to prisoner transport, and I said MDC, let me correct that. She wasn't ever taken to the Metropolitan Detention Center. She was taken to the transport center, and that's where they would not transport her to MDC due to her not complying. But what is there problems with the prisoner transport unit and officers? I mean, what are the rules there? Because once they got her there, she was cuffed, but they wouldn't do anything because she wouldn't take the breathalyzer test. She wasn't cooperative with that. So the officer then said prisoner transport said, we're not going to deal with this, and made the officer. But I'm sure of that. But could you kind of familiarize us with responsibilities prisoner has and when they can say, we're not going to arrest this person, and then it causes another police report because she's taken to multiple places?
Right. So that poses some issues that we're trying to work through with the prisoner transport center. Currently, I believe their SOP says that they can refuse any transport of prisoner if they feel that that prisoner is going to maybe agitate the other prisoners and kind of cause issues for, the rest of the prisoners as well as the transport officers. Excuse me. So then it becomes the officer's responsibility to also kind of transport that person. Also, they could feel that the person may be of the intoxication level where they may not necessarily have the appropriate medical staff to tend to that person in the event that that person's intoxication level is so high that their, physical well-being, medical well-being, I guess you could say, takes a turn for the worse. So then depending on the situation, it becomes a question of, okay, do we transport this person to the Metropolitan Detention Center and give them a breathalyzer then? Or is it something that we need to take this person to the hospital for relative to their intoxication level? And if in fact that we do need to get blood, that right there sounds a little odd to me, because for us to get blood from somebody from a right then and there for a DWI, we would need to get a warrant for that blood. That's basically a search warrant, because that means are more intrusive than just taking a breathalyzer. But those are some circumstances in which the Prisoner Transport Center can refuse to transport particular prisoners.
Okay, well, that was my question, because it just seems like for prisoner transport, she just wouldn't blow correctly. But then when they took her to the hospital, that escalated. It just seemed like she got more and more agitated when that occurred. So they had to get blood drawn. I was wondering, they don't have any nurses at prisoner transport. They don't have nurses at NBC, because that just seemed to escalate the problem. So that's why I was asking.
No, I
that was
agree.
his response. I think that.
Right. I agree with you. They do have medical staff at PTC and at MDC. But depending on, like I said, the intoxication level of that person, PTC and their medical staff can make the decision to pretty much decide, hey, we think this person may need a higher level of medical intervention relative to what our skills are.
Okay. All right. Just a couple of questions through reading through that. All right. Ms. Barella, we have a motion and a second. Will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Luce.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Wartell. Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, thank you. We'll move on to 21-15116. And once again, like I said, I'll just give you guys a quick overview of what I read. So an officer was doing overtime at a store, and this gentleman was seen taking something out of a package and putting it, concealing it. And when the officers and them approached him, they did after a while identify and said, "We're officer," because I think the security went with them. And the gentleman on top of that was in one of those carts, one of those electric carts, when you're sitting on the electric cart, that's what he was in. And he refused, excuse me, he refused to give the item he stole to them, or was trying to steal, that he was concealing. He refused to do it. And when they told him that they were going to, if he didn't stand up, because they were going to arrest him for theft. I think the word they used theft, but they were going to arrest him for stealing out of the store. That he became resistant. He would not stand up. He wouldn't cooperate with the officers whatsoever. So once again, the officers had to use some type of force in order to arrest this gentleman. And I think when they finally released him, and he was cited to court to come back to court, and they did his case there, and it just said the date that his hearing was going to be for help me here, Commander Norris. What's this word? I'm trying to see when you steal something out of us. It's not theft. It's, what do they call it?
Shoplifting?
Anyway, there you go. Thank you. He was shoplifting in essence. So, so they did have to use some type of force. And I think in all these cases, the people came pretty much resistant after being in handcuffs for all three of these cases. So that was a similarity that I noticed on these cases. But he did, and I agree. And so with everything, and I'm not going to go through the whole case because I'm assuming that the board members have read through these presentations and have looked at the video, and if there's any comment, please, we'll open it up for discussion. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion that we accept the Force Review Board's findings on case number 21-15116. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, Ms. Perla, will you call the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Luce,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Wartell.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. And with that, I'm sorry, I'm texting Member Rashad. He's still in the meeting. So with that, let me pull up my agenda. Ms. Perella, can you tell me what's next on the agenda?
Chair French, item 6, discussion updates and possible action. Request for waiver from City Council related to CPOAB training requirements.
Okay. With that, let me just say that we still have that CPA training that is required. I think at our last board member meeting, we discussed that. Board members have not completed that training, and it's necessary, and the ordinance is pretty strict on if you miss training, you'll automatically be removed, that sort of thing. So Councilor Gooch and I had talked about this, and Member Wartell, because he's the head person from the board, the contact on the training. And so we had discussed asking City Council for a waiver, and I'm going to ask Councilor Gooch to expound on that, what we're actually trying to accomplish here, and probably how we would word it.
Thank you, Chair French, members of the board. It's my understanding that the most recent version of the Civilian Police Academy started and is now done possibly, and that the board either didn't know or wasn't informed. Whatever it is, communications didn't happen in a way that would allow board members to attend those trainings. And so part of the item for request to City Council would be asking to ensure that the communications are open so that the next CPA start date is provided to the board with enough time to allow you all to plan accordingly, and then reiterate a request that it no longer be a requirement. But also, if there's any other trainings that you all would like to raise, I know that some are still being created, so technically you haven't missed them because they don't exist yet. But it would be a good opportunity to communicate with City Council where you are, what is outstanding, and what you need a waiver regarding to ensure board members are not terminated from the board for failure to make the CPA requirements.
Okay. So with that, I guess this is a request, and I guess I need a motion for approval of a request for a waiver be sent to City Council from the board. And of course I would sign it, but it would be coming from all of us. So I want a motion that we do the waiver and send it to City Council. So is there a second? No second?
Second.
Okay. I started to say, okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
I'm concerned that we would be communicating individual training issues to City Council, allowing them to pick and choose which trainings are waivered. I would suggest that we make it a blanket statement that
Let me see a minute.
may I finish?
I'm sorry, Member Wartel. I wasn't talking to the board. I'm so sorry.
I would suggest that the waiver be for any coursework that the start of which or the availability of which does not exist or has not been communicated. Does that
Sorry,
make
I muted
sense?
myself. Yeah, I'm sorry, I muted myself because I was talking. I agree with you, and I think we had discussed this. And Councilor Gooch, remember I had said also, if we're going to ask for a waiver, there's several other things that are in the pipeline, but we still don't have, such as the IA training that's been there. I haven't got for the last year and a half. Other trainings that we have. So what are your thoughts on that?
Chair French, members of the board, I think that makes sense. There are trainings that don't exist yet. So advising and informing City Council of that and noting that the people that need to make them are working on it, I think is a good way to include and keep everyone with open communication. And then also we need to figure out who sets the CPA and whose job it is to tell you all when it's happening so that you all can make plans to be there for whatever parts of it you're required to be at. But I agree with Member Wartel that it needs to be very blanket. It needs to cover all board members for all the things that either don't exist or you all haven't been informed of. But I do think we should list what those things are. And we do have a training spreadsheet that we can utilize for that.
Yes, I'm not arguing against listing what those things are. I'm arguing against who has and hasn't completed training.
Say that again, Member Wartel. What'd you say again?
I'm arguing against listing which of the board members has and hasn't completed which training in this particular memo.
Yes, I don't think that wasn't my intention. I was just going to ask for like a blanket request of certain training, not list anybody's name on who has or who hasn't completed them.
Right.
But why does it have to be a waiver?
Because the ordinance states, excuse me, go ahead, Member Wartuff.
What are you suggesting, Eric?
I'm suggesting that the CPA be voluntary. If there are members that want to take it and have the time to do so, so be it. If they don't, then they should not have to take it. I've gone through the training. I don't see where it's necessary as a citizen serving on this board to go through that many hours of training. Now, if a curriculum can be built or created out of that training to synthesize it, or should I say, narrow it down to a reasonable amount of time covering topics, that can be revisited. But that Citizens Police Academy does not make me any more effective as a board member. And I think it's a waste of time in that case. If someone chooses not to do it, I don't see that as being a problem at all in serving on the board.
Chair French, I'm in complete agreement with Member Nixon. And I thought that was part of what you said at the beginning of your motion.
No. Okay, so the reason that I made the motion for the waiver, and Councilor Gooch, help me with this. Am I wrong? The ordinance is pretty specific, saying if you don't take these trainings in a specific amount of time, you'll be automatically removed from the board. But like I told you, it seems like they have not done anything or enforced it so far. But if they decided to, it's there. But yet it seems that there's nothing being said about the other classes that we haven't received, there doesn't seem to be a problem with that at all, like the IA training, but it's just the CPA that keeps raising its ugly head. Go ahead.
If I may. So the reason that it's like that is because the way the updated ordinance reads is that if a training is not available by the city, the 30-day grace period is extended to include any time frame to allow the training to be offered and reasonable completion of the training. So for instance, tier 3 use of force training that we are working to schedule through APD Training Academy, because it's not offered, no one is in violation for not having done it. However, the CPA under the current ordinance is a requirement. And as much as the board is advocating for it not to be a requirement until the ordinance is changed, it is. And so the waiver would help hold off or fend off any claims that board members should be automatically terminated if the expiration of the 30-day grace period happens and someone has not been able to complete the CPA classes. Now, the CPA is a year period to do instead of 6 months, which is what the other trainings are. But still, we are running on those deadlines, given that the last version or round of the CPA happened and the board wasn't aware. And so members within their year were unable to attend. So we do have concern. I have concern that given that, and because it's offered, a waiver is the only way to ensure we're all on the same page about board members' continued presence on the board.
Why not simply do both? Ask for the waiver and also reiterate the board's opposition to requiring the CPA.
I thought that was included in the original motion, that the
That's
communication should also make that request.
That's what I thought, Jesse.
Yeah, it was.
However it's crafted, and if I understand what you're saying, I think there should be a moratorium on this CPA until something's decided that makes sense. You know, it seems like members are at the whim of whatever happens with the scheduling of the CPA. If it's not in a certain time and someone comes on board, then they can be considered in violation, even though there may not be another CPA that is within the next 30 days or the time frame that is required. But I think that the CPA itself needs to be rethought as far as the mandate. Right now, anybody going through the CPA, in my opinion, you're just being indoctrinated into being a citizen police person. It doesn't serve, in my opinion, especially the number of hours. It serves more as a filter. You know, if you're retired, maybe older, and you have the time on your hands, maybe you don't have kids and stuff, then you can afford the time to be away at that point, given it. If you don't fit into that, then you risk being in violation, even though you could be a perfectly good board member regardless. And the other piece of that is I understand it's in the ordinance, but I think that maybe, Patty, we should be pushing to have the mandate removed from the ordinance, because I don't see it being effective as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion, since everybody likes to use that buzzword in lieu of anti-racism or whatever you want to call it. I don't see the point. I think that voluntarily, if people want to take, that's one thing, but this is something that, as long as it's going to be a mandate, you are going to exclude a certain number of great potential board members that can represent Albuquerque's real demographic and the population, and it's at risk with the CPA being mandated. So
I agree, Member Nixon, and I think we've expressed that. We voted against it at least 2 times. The only way that everybody knew there was a Citizen Police Academy is because I happened to look on the website and it said that one started in September, but no board member was ever notified. And my concern as I told Tina, is that we lose very good board members because the ordinance doesn't leave us any gray area when it comes to not taking classes available. So I agree with everything you said. I think we voiced that. I just don't know how to get it done. That's all I
think
can
we
say.
first need to understand who's targeting. It's supposed to be part of the ordinance. I'm just trying to understand who's enforcing that to say it's mandated and it can't be changed. I think if it's mandated, it can be changed. I think we just have to have the conversation with whoever those powers that be are in order to push that case.
Well,
We've
but-
been down this path before. We just need to work with city council on it. I mean, it's in the ordinance. We just need to get the ordinance changed. We've actually had that conversation before, so I don't think it would be that difficult to start it again.
Okay.
But I also don't think we can do it in the span of this motion. So,
Okay. Agreed.
Well, in fact, Chair French and I have discussed exactly this with 7 individual board members, all of whom agreed with us and then refused to change it. So I think we should simply, especially in this motion, re-emphasize it again and continue to work on removing it as a mandate.
I agree. And member Wartell is right. He and I met with counselors. Every one of them agreed. I think there's one that said, well, maybe a condensed version, but the majority of them said, you're right. We don't see, why we should be doing this. I mean, that you guys should be required, and we'll look into it. And then the next thing you know, we get another email that says something different. So you're right. Let's just continue. Member Wartell, you're the head of training. Sorry, guys, you're in this training meeting with Member Gooch, so I will leave that. We will work again, and let's try to get city council to change that, because we do need that, I think, removed, because it's just too time consuming. Like Member Crawford was saying, he was able to take most of them, but some of them, that's a huge commitment. 10 or 12 weeks, 2 times a week for 3 hours. That's a huge commitment, and it's, there's no leeway there. None whatsoever. So I do believe that. So let's do everything we can to make this happen, to get it out of the ordinance. But as was stated, we can't do that with this motion. We have to work with city council. So we will try to do that again.
One more point, Chair French, and that is in the meeting that we had with the monitor last Friday, it was pointed out that it was the U.S. attorneys or the representatives of the Department of Justice who wanted the CPA in the ordinance, when in fact their jurisdiction is over the CASA, not of the ordinance. So I think we need to work on both fronts.
I agree. I totally agree. And you're right, that was said, so I do agree. All right, any more discussion?
Chair French, if you could just restate the motion for clarity, that would be great and helpful to me. Thanks.
You would ask me that. I'm not sure myself. Let me just say, I made a motion. I asked for a motion that we send, I'm gonna restate it. I'm gonna amend it. I'm gonna make a motion that we send a waiver. We ask for a waiver of CPA and any other classes that haven't been offered to city council. Let me stop there on my motion and ask Councilor Gooch. In all the discussion that we've had, should I include that a waiver be given and a possible removal from the ordinance? Would that be allowed? I know Member Crawford's right. We have to go, and Member Wartell, yes, we have to meet with them. We have to get it done that way. But would it be out of line to ask in this particular letter?
Chair French, members of the board, no, I think I wrote down, ask for a waiver of the CPA, ask for city council to consider removing it, and an update about next steps in order to effectuate removal.
So there's my motion. Did you hear it? Carla?
I did, Chair French, and Member Jackson seconded it. So if he agrees with the changes, we're good to go.
Member
Yes.
Jackson? Okay, all right, thank you. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? Ms. Varela, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Luce,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Wartell.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passed unanimously.
Okay, and the next item, case review materials, my name was on that, but I think that was Member Rashad's particular item he wanted on the board. So I'm gonna make a motion that we table that one also. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Member Varela, will you take the roll?
Member Crawford,
Yes.
Member French,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
Member Luce,
Yes.
Member Nixon,
Yes.
Member Wartell.
Yes.
Thank you. And that motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to subcommittee assignments. We have a new board member, and so I have made new assignments. Sorry, guys. So for the P&P committee, it will be Member Crawford, okay, of course, he does a great job with that one. Member Jackson and Member Luce. For case review, it will be Member Nixon, Member Rashad, and Member Wartell. For community outreach, it will be Member Crawford, Member Luce, and Member Jackson. For personnel, it would be myself, Member Nixon, and I believe I took Member Wartell. And if anybody has, just want to say, if your job prohibits you and you have any issues, we're trying to make them all after 5. I know we moved the P&P after 5 so that people could get there. But if you have, if the timing of the meetings are an issue to you, please let us know. Please let me know, and let's work with the chair of that subcommittee or whoever and see if we can't get that time adjusted. I don't think it's ever been a time to an issue to move the time. So with that, we'll move on to the next one, and I'm sorry, I can't read it. And that's old business. Is there any old business? Okay, and with that, new business. I just wanted to say, I'm not sure. I thought at the meeting that we had with the monitor that our previous executive director Ewing had said that they had hired a community outreach person. I'm not sure. Ms. Gooch said she said they had re-advertised it. I'm not sure about that. So I don't know if that's new business that they've done it. I sit on the outreach committee and I have no idea if that person was hired or not, but so we'll find out for you so we can give that update. That would be new business because we've often talked about we need that community outreach person because that's an important part of this board is to have community out there, the community to know we're here. And also I wanted to let everyone know that let everyone know that we did put the circular is out there for the executive director's position. And so anybody that knows anybody that is looking for a job, I just wanted to let everyone know that it is there. I can send the board members the link so you can forward it to anybody that you know that might be interested. But I just wanted to let everybody know that Ms. Beverly Samuels, our HR person, responded right away and got it out there for us ASAP. So I want to say thank you to her. And I just want to let board members know that it is out there. So with that, is there any other?
Yeah, Angela, do you have your email address, your CPOA email address yet?
I do not yet.
Okay, just checking. There
But
was
I
an email
can,
sent out to include you.
okay, you're welcome to use my personal one, which I know is the one that's been being used until it's ready. Of
Understood. Okay, thank you.
course.
I don't have anything else. No, Chairman, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, and that, yeah, and we'll be happy to, well, I know member Counselor Gooch and Ms. Varela are following up on that for you, Ms. Luce. So we should have some answers this week to make sure you get that information and you're not being required to use your personal email for board business. So we will try to expedite that request and get that done for you right away. And with that, is there any other business? All right, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. Member Varela, please put a note on the record that Member Rashad was excused because he did text me and let me know that he was not able to. He was trying to get on now. So, okay, his absence is excused. Thank you.
Okay, duly noted.